Her daughter sent a selfie while on a camping trip with the grandparents, but when her mother zoomed in on the picture, she froze and started to panic. Lydia Harron sat in her study, the afternoon sunlight filtering through the half-drawn blinds, and tried to focus on the spreadsheet open on her laptop, a critical project for a potential promotion. But her mind kept wandering. With a sigh, she rubbed her tired eyes and shifted positions in her chair for the 10th time in the past hour. "This isn't working," she muttered to herself, shoving away from the desk. The house was too quiet. Normally her 5-year-old daughter Hazel would be bouncing around, chattering away about her day at kindergarten, or demanding Toby pushed on the backyard swing. But Hazel was away camping with her grandparents, and the silence was deafening. Lydia padded down the hallway to the master bedroom and into the adjoining bathroom. She opened the cabinet above the sink, her fingers trembling slightly as they reached for the orange prescription bottle tucked behind the mouthwash. Just as her fingertips brushed against the plastic, a voice from the doorway startled her. "Lydia, don't." "Nick." Her husband stood in the bathroom doorway, his expression a mixture of disappointment and concern. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, a habit when he was worried. "I know what you're thinking," he said softly, stepping into the small bathroom. "But you promised 4 months clean." Remember? Lydia's hand hovered near the bottle, trembling slightly. "I can't focus, Nick. This report is due tomorrow, and I haven't written a single coherent paragraph." Her voice cracked. "Just one pill to help me concentrate." Nick gently took her hand and lowered it from the cabinet. "If you take one now, you'll take another tomorrow. Then we're back to square one, and those therapy sessions we've been going to every week will have been for nothing." Lydia's shoulders slumped as she closed the cabinet door, catching another glimpse of her tired face in the mirror. "I know you're right, I just..." She trailed off, uncertain how to explain the anxious energy coursing through her. "You're worried about Hazel," Nick said, leading her back to their bedroom and sitting beside her on the edge of the bed. "That's what this is really about, isn't it?" Lydia nodded, feeling slightly embarrassed at being so transparent. This is the longest she's been away from. Us 2 nights was already pushing it, but 3, and we've only heard from them once since they left yesterday morning. Mom and Dad have taken her camping plenty of times before Nick reminded her, his voice gentle but firm. "They're experienced. They've toured half the country in that camper van, yes, but never for 3 nights with a toddler," Lydia insisted. "And your parents aren't exactly young anymore. Nick Hazeley's 5 and full of energy. What if she wanders off while they're napping? What if..." "What?" "If we trust that my parents who raised me and my 2 siblings without major incident can handle 1 kindergartner for 3 days, Nick interrupted with a slight smile. He massaged her tense shoulders, his strong fingers working at the knots that had formed there. "Remember why they offered to take her in the first place." Lydia sighed. "So I could finish this project and possibly land the promotion." "Exactly. My parents adore Hazeland. They wanted to give you this time to focus. They're probably having the time of their lives, showing her all the camping tricks they've picked up over the years." As Nick continued to massage her shoulders, Lydia felt some of the tension ebbing away. He was right, of course. June and Charles, Nick's parents, were experienced. "Campers who doted on their only granddaughter, you know," Nick said, with a playful tone, leaning in closer to her ear. "If you finish your work early, we might actually get some alone time. When's the last time we had the house to ourselves for more than a few hours?" Despite her anxiety, Lydia found herself smiling. You make a compelling argument. Lydia nodded, taking a deep breath. You're right. I'm sorry for trying to take the medication. 4 months is the longest I've gone without it, and I don't want to break that streak. She stood up, squaring her shoulders. With renewed determination, the pills would stay in the cabinet where they belonged. She had promises to keep to Nick, to her therapist, and most importantly to herself. With Nick by her side, she walked out of the bathroom, leaving the pills behind back. In the bedroom, Lydia's phone chimed with a notification. She hurried to the bedside table where it was charging and saw a new message from June, Nick's mother. It's from your mom, she told Nick eagerly, opening the chat. A blurry selfie appeared on the screen. Alongside a string of nonsensical letters, Lydia couldn't help but chuckle. Hazel had clearly gotten hold of June's phone. Look at this, she said, showing Nick the phone. Hazel's learning how to take selfies now. Nick peered over her shoulder and laughed. Kids these days and technology. She's only 5 and already more tech-savvy than my parents. The picture was partially blurred, but Lydia could make out a campsite in the background. More importantly, Hazel's grinning face was visible, her blonde curls wild around her cherubic face. She looked happy and safe, which eased some of Lydia's anxiety. She was about to call back when another picture arrived. This one was clearer, Hazel with her tongue out in classic 5-year-old fashion. In the background, Lydia could see the camper van and June and Charles sitting around a fireplace. But there was someone else there too, a man Lydia didn't recognize. No, that wasn't quite right. There was something eerily familiar about him. Lydia frowned and zoomed in on the man's face. Her heart began to pound as recognition dawned. Nick. She called, her voice tight. Come look at this. Nick, who had returned to the living room couch to read the news on his tablet, called back, What is it? Just come here, please. When Nick returned, Lydia thrust the phone into his hands. Do you see what I see? Nick squinted at the screen, pinching and zooming to get a better look at the man. Looks like some random camper to me. Probably another family they met at the site. No, Lydia insisted, taking the phone back and zooming in again. Look more carefully. That's Caleb, your ex-husband. Nick's tone was skeptical. I don't think so. Lydia, Caleb was always clean-cut and his hair was darker. This guy has light brown hair. But Lydia was certain. Despite the changes in his appearance, the hair the fuller. Beard. She recognized the shape of his eyes, the set of his jaw. This was definitely Caleb. She checked the calendar on her phone. It's been 5 years, she murmured, more to herself than to Nick. 5 years since he went to prison for domestic violence and drugs. Nick's expression softened. He knew Lydia's history with Caleb, the abuse she'd suffered when she was pregnant with Hazel the night Caleb had nearly choked her to death before the police arrived. If that really is Caleb, Lydia continued, her voice trembling, then he must have been released. But why didn't anyone inform me? I should have been notified. Panic rising in her chest, Lydia tried calling June, but there was no answer. She tried Charles next, with the same result. Let's go, she said to Nick, already grabbing her purse. Nick hesitated. Lydia, are you sure? Let's go, she repeated, her voice rising with urgency. If Caleb is there with Hazel, we need to get to them. Right now. Nick nodded, finally sensing the gravity of the situation. He rushed downstairs to start the car, while Lydia grabbed a few more necessities before following him, however. Lydia ducked back into the bathroom. She opened the cabinet again and stared at the medication. After a minute of internal struggle, she grabbed the entire bottle and shoved it into her purse. Lydia, let's go. Nick called from downstairs. She hurried downstairs to the driveway where Nick was waiting in the car, engine running. As she slid into the passenger seat, she felt the weight of the pill bottle in her purse like a guilty secret. Trinity Pines is about an hour away, Nick said as they pulled out of the driveway. Try calling your in-laws again while I drive. Lydia nodded, clutching her phone tightly. She was trying not to imagine the worst, but if Caleb was really at the campsite with her daughter, nothing good could come of it. Trinity Pines' campground was nestled in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, a peaceful rustic retreat surrounded by towering pines and meandering hiking trails. Lydia and Nick had visited the area many times with Hazel, and June and Charles had mentioned they would spend 2 nights there before moving to another park for their 3rd night. I still don't understand how Caleb could be there, Nick said as they sped down the highway. Do my parents know him? Have they ever met him? Lydia asked. Nick shook his head, keeping his eyes on the road. I don't think so. They're away in their camper, so often they're not really up to date with what's happening around town. Maybe it's just someone who looks like him. Lydia suggested, trying to calm herself, but deep down she knew better. That was Caleb in the photo. As they continued driving in anxious silence, Lydia's thoughts drifted back to the night Caleb was arrested. She had been 8 months pregnant, her belly enormous and tender. The memory of his hands around her throat, squeezing as his face contorted with rage, was something she'd tried for years to forget. If the neighbors hadn't called. The police. Look, Nick said, suddenly pulling Lydia from her dark memories. Police cars. Oh God, she whispered, clutching the dashboard, as Nick accelerated even more, his knuckles whitening on the steering wheel. They parked hastily and rushed toward the cluster of police officers and rangers gathered near the center of the campground. The campground parking area now buzzing with activity. Another police car had joined the others, and Lydia could see uniformed officers talking to various campers. Her eyes frantically scanned the area for June and Charles's camper van. It wasn't hard to spot June and Charles. They were seated at a picnic. Speaking to a detective who was taking notes, Charles had an ice pack pressed against his temple, and June looked pale and shaken. There, Nick pointed to the familiar blue and white vehicle parked near a cluster of pine trees. And there's my dad. As they approached, Lydia overheard Charles describing what had happened. He introduced himself as Collins. Charles was saying, his voice trembling slightly. Seemed like a decent fellow, very kind to us, and especially to Hazel. Last night we even had a barbecue together. He came with a woman named Maya June. Added his sister, I think. Elegant woman, but friendly, too. They were both so good with children. Since yesterday, they've been keeping Hazel company, playing with her drawing and coloring. During the BBQ last night, Charles continued, he told Hazel all sorts of children's stories, and he was a great cook. Made the meat so tender that Hazel, who usually isn't fond of meat, finished her entire dinner. We thought they were good people. The detective nodded, still taking notes. And what happened this morning? Charles lowered the ice pack, revealing a nasty bruise after breakfast. They said they were leaving soon. Hazel was upset and asked to play with them one more time. They promised not to go far, said they were just going to pick leaves and flowers like they had yesterday. June took over her voice. Quavering, I was cleaning inside the camper, arranging Hazel's things. Charles was outside reading. Charles continued. Yeah, I was reading outside. I didn't realize I was so engrossed in my book I didn't see them getting her into their vehicle. By the time I heard the engine start and looked up, they were already pulling away. I ran after them, he said, touching his bruised face gingerly. Got to the driver's side before they could leave the campground. Collins, if that's even his real name, got out and hit me multiple times. I couldn't stop him. June reached over to take her husband's hand. I called the police immediately, but they've been gone for more than an hour now. Detective Rollins spoke up. Child abductors typically try to put as much distance as possible between themselves and the abduction site. We've put out an alert for the camper van, but without Allison's plate number, it's challenging. Do you have any photos of this Collins person? Nick asked. June shook her head. Sadly, we don't really take many pictures when we're camping. It's not our habit. Lydia's hand flew to her mouth. The selfie, she gasped. Hazel sent us a selfie from your phone, June. The man was in the background. She fumbled with her phone, pulling up the clearer of the two photos Hazel had sent and handed it to Detective Rollins. I think it might be my ex-husband, Caleb Winters. The detective studied the photo carefully. Why would you think your ex-husband would take your daughter? Lydia took a deep breath, aware of all eyes on her. Caleb went to prison 5 years ago for domestic violence and drug possession. I was 35 weeks pregnant with Hazel when she swallowed hard. When he assaulted me, I nearly died. If the police hadn't arrived when they did, she pulled up an old photo of Caleb from social media and showed it to the detective. The man in Hazel's selfie looks different. He has hair now and he's heavier, but I'm almost certain it's him. Detective Rollins compared the two photos thoughtfully. There are similarities, though. It's hard to be 100% certain with the quality of the image and the changes. You mentioned, if this is indeed your ex-husband, Mrs. Harron, it would make sense that he's targeting his biological child. Another officer approached their group, speaking quietly to Detective Rollins before addressing them all. We've spoken with other campers and the campground manager. Several people reported seeing a camper van matching the description heading toward town, not up the mountain as we initially thought. Lydia's phone suddenly vibrated, displaying an unknown number. She dismissed it, assuming it was a marketing call from a bank or insurance company, but when it immediately rang again, she reconsidered. Excuse me, she said to the detective. I need to take this call. Lydia stepped away from the group, finding a quiet corner near a cluster of pine trees. Her hand trembled as she answered the call. Hello. Keep your voice down and listen carefully. The voice on the other end said, sending a chill down Lydia's spine. It was unmistakably Caleb. In the background, she could hear Hazel chattering excitedly about something. Caleb, she whispered, her free hand curling into a fist. What have you done? Where's Hazel? She's fine, he replied, his tone eerily calm. She's having the time of her life, actually. Aren't you, sweetheart? His voice became slightly distant as he presumably turned to speak to Hazel. Lydia heard her daughter's cheerful reply, the innocent sound nearly breaking her. Caleb, please. She pleaded quietly. Don't do this. She doesn't even know you. That's exactly the problem, isn't it? His voice hardened. My own daughter doesn't know me. 5 years of her life gone, time I'll never get back. You have no right. I have every right. I'm her biological father. He snapped, cutting her off. Now, listen closely. I don't want to hurt Hazel. I didn't take her to harm her. I just want to talk. You and me, we have unfinished business. Lydia glanced back at the group huddled around Detective Rollins. Nick was watching, her concern etched across his face. Why should I believe you? She snapped. You took my daughter. You knew she'd be here with my in-laws. You planned this, didn't you? Because if you don't come alone, if you tell the police or that husband of yours about this call, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of mother you really are. His voice lowered dangerously. I'll tell them everything, Lydia. Every dirty little secret. Her blood ran cold. What are you talking about? You can't threaten me. The police won't believe anything you say. Caleb let out a humorless laugh. Won't? They have you forgotten what you did cheating on me with Nick while you were pregnant? The amount of alcohol and drugs you consumed, even though you knew you were carrying our child, or how about the money you stole from your company to feed your addiction? Lydia's legs nearly gave out. She leaned against a nearby tree for support, making sure she was still out of earshot from the others. That's all in the past, as she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Nick and I got help. We've been clean for 4 months, and for 4 whole months, Caleb mocked. Congratulations. But those company funds you embezzled, that little accounting trick that got 3 innocent employees fired. That doesn't just go away, Lydia. She closed her eyes, shame and fear battling within her. What do you want? Caleb, I told you I want to talk. Meet me at the Sunshine Cafe in Oakage. You know it. My sister owns it. Come alone. Bring Hazel's documents. Birth certificate, medical records, everything. Why would I bring her documents? Lydia asked, suspicion rising. You'll understand when you get here, and Lydia, don't make me wait. Don't call this number back, and don't try anything clever. Remember what's at stake. The line went dead. Lydia tried immediately to call back, but as Caleb had warned, the number was already disconnected. She stared at the phone, mind racing through impossible options. If she told the police about the call, Caleb might follow through on his threat. The embezzlement had happened over 5 years ago, but the statute of limitations hadn't expired. She could face criminal charges, lose her job, lose custody of Hazel, everything she'd worked so hard to build. But if she went alone, was she walking into a trap? What did Caleb really want, after all this time, taking a deep breath to compose herself? Lydia returned to the group. Nick immediately moved to her side. Who was that? He asked. You were on the phone for a while. Lydia's mind raced for a plausible lie. It was from the office, she said, avoiding his gaze. They're demanding that report I was supposed to mail them. They're not happy with the delay. Nick looked skeptical, but didn't press the issue. Around them, the police had cordoned off an area with yellow tape and more. Officers had arrived. The detective approached them with a serious expression. We've set up roadblocks and issued an AMER alert for Hazel. It would be best for all of you to go home and rest. We'll update you as soon as we have any information. Lydia nodded absently, her mind already formulating a plan to get away and meet Caleb. I'm going to take my parents to the hospital, Nick said, putting his arm around Lydia's shoulders. Charles needs to get that head wound properly examined, and they're both pretty shaken up. Charles and June were already being led to an ambulance, the older man still clutching the ice pack to his head. In need to take their camper back, Nick continued. What about you? Lydia saw her opportunity. I think I'll go home, she said. I need to finish that work project. Nick looked at her incredulously. Now, in the middle of all this, did you tell your office what happened? It's just a small business thing I need to deal with. Lydia insisted I'll catch up with you at the hospital in a few hours. That promotion is still important. Nick frowned, but eventually nodded. All right, if that's what you need to do. They said their goodbyes to the police with promises to stay in touch. If there were any developments, Lydia watched as the ambulance departed with June and Charles, Nick following behind in their camper van. Once alone in her car, the facade Lydia had been maintaining crumbled. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, her body trembling as panic and anxiety overtook. Her tears streamed down her face as she pounded the steering wheel in frustration. Why is this happening? She sobbed to the empty car. "Why now?" Her gaze fell on her purse sitting on the passenger seat. The bottle of pills she'd taken from home seemed to call to her, promising instant relief from the overwhelming stress. With shaking hands, Lydia reached for the purse and withdrew the bottle. She twisted off the cap and shook a tablet into her palm, staring at it with a mixture of longing and self-loathing. She remembered her promise to Nick, the 4 months of sobriety they'd fought so hard to maintain. But this was different, wasn't it? This was an emergency. She needed to be clear-headed to save Hazel, and her anxiety was making that impossible, rationalizing her decision. Lydia broke the tablet in half. A smaller dose wouldn't be as dangerous, she told herself. It would just take the edge off, help her focus without compromising her driving ability. She swallowed the half-pill dry, waiting for the familiar calming effect to wash over her. After a few minutes, she felt her racing heart slow and her mind clear. The panic receded, replaced by a determined focus. With steady hands, now Lydia started the car and pulled out of the campground parking lot, heading for home. The drive from Trinity Pines back to their home would have normally taken just under an hour, but Lydia made it in 40 minutes. Her mind too preoccupied to notice her speedometer creeping well above the limit on the winding mountain roads. The house felt unnervingly quiet as she entered. Lydia went straight to the master bedroom, where a small fireproof lockbox held all their important documents. Her fingers fumbled with the combination lock, requiring 3 attempts before it finally opened. Inside were their passports, social security cards, insurance policies, and Hazel's documents. Birth certificate, social security card, immunization records, and medical history. She rifled through the papers, organizing Hazel's documents into a manila folder. As she worked, questions tumbled through her mind. Why did Caleb want these papers? Was he planning to take Hazel away permanently out of state, or even out of the country? "I won't let that happen," she whispered fiercely to the empty room. Lydia glanced at the clock. She needed to get moving. Oakage was about 30 minutes away in the opposite direction from her home. She gathered Hazel's documents, took a deep breath, and headed back to her car. The Sunshine Cafe was situated in the heart of Oakage, its cheerful yellow awning visible from a block away. Adjacent to the cafe was a colorful playground designed to keep children entertained while parents enjoyed their coffee and pastries. Lydia parked across the street, scanning for the familiar camper van that belonged to Caleb and Ma, but it wasn't there. Only a sleek black luxury car sat by the curb. Then she spotted Hazel in the sandbox, her heart leaping at the sight of her daughter safe, smiling carefree. But the relief shattered just as quickly. A woman, presumably Maya, had seen her. Without hesitation, she ushered Hazel toward the indoor playground, her movement swift, purposeful, like she'd been waiting for Lydia to arrive. At least she's okay, Lydia murmured to herself, deciding to leave Hazel's documents in the car for now. She wouldn't hand them over until she absolutely had to. As Lydia crossed the street, a woman with sleek dark hair and designer sunglasses approached her. She had Caleb's same jawline and carried herself with the confident air of someone accustomed to luxury. "Maya," Lydia acknowledged coldly. "He's waiting inside," Mia replied, gesturing toward a private room often used for children's birthday parties. "This way." The cafe wasn't crowded today, with only a few patrons scattered at the outdoor tables. Inside the private room, Caleb sat at a table looking more polished than the man Lydia remembered. Prison had changed him physically. He was leaner. His once bald head now covered with light brown hair. His formerly clean-shaven face sporting a well-groomed beard. "Lydia," he greeted her, his voice carrying the same smooth charm that had once captivated her. "It's been a long time." Lydia felt the effects of the medication wearing off, anxiety creeping back as she faced her ex-husband. "Hazel," she demanded, foregoing pleasantries. "She'll start looking for me soon. She's perfectly fine, as you saw for yourself," Caleb assured her. "Maya will keep her entertained while we talk. What do you want?" Caleb, Lydia asked, taking a seat across from him but keeping her distance. Caleb leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "I want to discuss an arrangement with you. It's quite simple, really. I want you to tell Hazel the truth, that I'm her father." "I want her to live with me." "That's absurd," Lydia exclaimed. "You can't just show up after 5 years and expect you would still get to see her." Caleb interrupted smoothly. "Once a week, supervised visits. You get to continue your life with Nick, the man you cheated with while you were still with me. And I get to raise my daughter. It's fair considering the circumstances. And if I refuse," Lydia challenged, though she already knew the answer, "then I report everything you did to the police." Caleb said simply, "The druggist during pregnancy, the embezzlement from your company. You'd lose Hazel anyway, but you'd also end up in jail." Lydia's rage bubbled to the surface. "You did all those things too, Caleb. You took drugs and drank alcohol alongside me. You never tried to stop me even though you knew I was pregnant. We were both terrible, both not ready for a baby." "The difference," Caleb replied calmly, "is that I didn't steal thousands from my company, and I didn't cheat on you." "Please," Lydia begged, her anger giving way to desperation. "I don't take illegal drugs anymore. I've been through therapy. I have prescribed medication now, and I haven't even taken that for 4 months." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "Just 4 months after 5 years, so you were still taking drugs while caring for our baby. The medication was prescribed," Lydia insisted. "My therapist said it was safe. I only took it after Hazel was asleep, and I always dumped my milk afterward when I was breastfeeding. In prison I got therapy too." Caleb said, a hint of pride in his voice. "I've been completely clean for over 3 years now. If anyone deserved her, it's me." He leaned back in his chair, considering her. "But that's beside the point. Here's what's going to happen tonight. Hazel stays with me. You tell her I'm her father, her real father. Tomorrow, you don't come to pick her up. You can visit her on Saturday. And if I don't agree," Lydia asked, though she already knew she had no real choice, "then I call the police and tell them everything about your past." Caleb said simply, "Your choice." Lydia feeling cornered. Lydia reluctantly nodded. "Fine, I'll tell her." They walked together to the playground where Hazel was building a sandcastle with Maya. When the little girl spotted Lydia, her face lit up. "Mommy," she squealed, running to Lydia and throwing her arms around her legs. Lydia knelt down, hugging her daughter tightly, savoring the feel of her small, warm body. "Hi, sweetie. Are you having fun?" Hazel nodded enthusiastically. "Mr. Collins and Ms. Meir took me camping. We saw deer and picked flowers and had marshmallows." The innocence in her daughter's voice made what Lydia had to do next even more painful. She took a deep breath and said, "Hazel, sweetie, I need to tell you something important. This man isn't really Mr. Collins. His name is Caleb, and he's your father." Hazel's brow furrowed in confusion. "But Daddy Nick is my daddy." "Yes, Nick is your daddy too," Lydia explained, struggling to find the right words. But Caleb is your real daddy from when you were a tiny baby in my tummy. Hazel processed this information with the simple logic of a 5-year-old. So I have 2 daddies. Yes, Lydia confirmed. Relief washing over her that Hazel wasn't upset. The little girl seemed to accept this new reality with remarkable ease. She looked up at Caleb with curious eyes. Can I go to your house? Do you have toys? Caleb smiled, kneeling down to Hazel's level. Edo have toys and a swimming pool. Would you like to see it? Hazel's eyes widened with excitement, but then her expression changed. But I want Mommy to come too, I miss. Mommy Lydia's heart broke at her daughter's words. I can't come tonight, sweetie. I have work to do, but you're going to stay at Daddy Caleb's house tonight, and I'll come get you tomorrow. Hazel's face fell, and she began to protest. No, I want you to come with me. Seeing her daughter's distress, Lydia quickly amended her plan. Okay, how about this? I'll go with you to Caleb's house, and then I'll leave. Would that be okay? Hazel considered this compromise, then nodded reluctantly. Okay, wonderful, Caleb said, standing up. He turned to Lydia, his voice low enough that Hazel couldn't hear. Don't forget her documents. You better cooperate, or I will involve my lawyer. Lydia nodded mutely, her heart heavy, as she watched Hazel take Caleb's hand willingly. She had just agreed to hand her daughter over to her abuser, and there seemed to be nothing she could do about it. Hazel clambered into Caleb's car with Mia chattering excitedly about the swimming pool and what toys might be at the house. Lydia returned to her own vehicle, her movements mechanical, her mind numb with the weight of what was happening. Once inside her car, with the door shut against the world, Lydia finally allowed herself to feel the full force of her despair. Tears flowed freely as she pounded the steering wheel again, this time in anger rather than panic. How could I let this happen? She whispered to the empty car. How could I agree to give her up? The crushing sense of helplessness threatened to overwhelm her. She had 2 impossible choices. Surrender Hazel to Caleb,